My name's Steve Tomasula from the Creative Writing Program here at Notre Dame, and it's my distinct pleasure to welcome Kate Bernheimer, the author reading in our ongoing series of author readings. Kate Bernheimer has been called the master of the modern fairy tale, which never seemed right to me because shouldn't she be like the mistress of the modern fairy tale? But can the fairy tale, a tale told by fairies, have a mistress, or a master for that matter? Going to the origins of the word, the fairy tale is derived from Latin for fate, the course of a life, beyond any person's control. It is a life or a tale or a thread that's spun, measured, and cut by three goddesses. But here you can see how in order to describe the very words I'm using, I and Webster's dictionary have begun to fall back on the fairy tale to do so. And in this sense, fairy tales have no author. They're the primordial soup or witch's cauldron out of which so many of the stories we use to understand the world come bubbling up with their ogres and knights and werewolves, their cyborg tin men or ambiguously genetic flying monkeys and wish-granting fish. We use them to explain everything from the darkest woods of our deepest mind to, the Goldilocks planets in astronomy. All one has to do to see how deeply fairy tales have seeped into our consciousness is recite elements that need no explanation, but have the force to conjure their stories. The spindle, or the apple, the cape, a house made out of candy, the oven, a bone that speaks. Early humans began to paint animals on the walls of caves, it said, as the difference between animals and these first people began to flicker into human consciousness. True or not, this tale seems to explain the resurgence of Bernheimer's modern fairy tales, a growing awareness that there is, after all, less and less difference between us and the animals, and the trees, and the seas. Whereas we may have once been able to believe that we were masters over nature and then part of nature, it's becoming abundantly clear that we can't escape nature. And here the fairy tale, especially as Bernheimer recasts it, comes roaring back to life, for it is an original meeting ground of the beauty and the beast, the horrific and the sublime, the supernatural and the natural. No mere description of the world, a fairy tale is a spell that can cast our reality as surely as we've grown up thinking princesses are beautiful and wolves are evil. Or not. A vine can strangle you in your sleep or allow you to climb to heaven. They are the place where the horror of being eaten alive can be trumped by a miraculous resurrection borne by a woodcutter's axe. Or where we find the beauty of the crystal slipper that Cinderella makes fit by cutting off her toes. Like a kiss, Kate Bernheimer's fiction reawakens this beauty and dread, its golems and monsters to live among us and give us back our lives. I first encountered her writing through the first of what was to grow to be a trilogy of books, The Complete Tales of Ketsia Gold, The Complete Tales of Marigold, which I have here, and The Complete Tales of Lucy Gold. As you can see by the books on the shelf here, Kate's an author of a number of books. This trilogy is an epic in the form of tiny tales that's as heartbreaking in its elegant simplicity as in its intimation of the adult truths it contains. As you can see from her book, she's the author of two story collections, How a Mother Weaned Her Girl from Fairy Tales. Looks like this. Horse, Flower, and Bird. She's written children's books and edited 4 anthologies, including the award-winning My Mother, She Killed Me, My Father, He Ate Me, which I think is one of the few books I can think of that's become like an instantly canonical. And I also really appreciate the fact that it was translated into Russian and Chinese, which seems appropriate given that so many of the authors who rework these ancient fairy tales in the book have come full circle and given it back to their origins. A prolific critic, Bernheimer has lectured on the fairy tale as an art form at venues as diverse as the Museum of Modern Art, the Natural History Museum in New York, and a long list of universities. In fact, I could go on, but at this point the introduction seems not too cold, not too hot, just
right.
Correct. So, let's put our hands together and maybe by the force of our thunder we can conjure Kate Bernheimer to appear at this very podium.